Welcome to the finals of this 8-man, and great news, we won another die roll. So, this hand has Goertzen and a Model Cloak, and not much else. So, if I draw into a 2-drop or a 1-drop, it's actually fine, but having 5 lands is already quite a lot. I think that my deck can produce much better starts, so I'm going to mulligan to 6. Alright, this is more to my liking. I have the Tranquil Thicket as a mana source for a change, and then I'm just going to curve out very nicely with 3 2-drops. Even if I don't draw another land, I'm going to have plays for days. Alright, so actually quite interesting which of these to start with. I don't want to lose Solitary Emissary to a blocker, but I'm constrained on mana, so I think Phantom Nomad should probably be the first card to play. Yeah, especially if I'm playing against goblins. If this is a goblin, then Phantom Nomad is just incredible. It's basically a 2-for-1 card against goblins. Goblin Lackey. If my opponent has a burn spell, oh, interesting. Giant Strength. So much for 2-for-1ing. Huh, interesting. So, if Goblin Lackey deals damage to me here, I might just be dead. If my opponent has 4 mana goblin to put into play, that might actually be worth the +1 counter on my Phantom Nomad. I'm gonna block here. I don't like it, but I don't want this to trigger. And Armor of Thorns. So now I get to put the armor on here. I have to hold back. I can't do anything, but I'm safe from most burn spells. And I have the interaction that I talked about with the Phantom Nomads being pretty much invincible. Goertzen might be nice for later. Now I have to be a bit more mana aware, even if my piano might just be blocking a creature here. Every turn that my opponent attacks and I have Phantom Nomads, oh my god. This is actually the worst case. Aftershock, one of the very few ways that my opponent could have dealt with Phantom Nomads. Yeah, I'm just going to take the damage now and see what happens. Yeah. This is great. I had an invincible Phantom Nomad, and my opponent had the main deck Aftershock. A card that I don't usually play in my Goblin decks, but yeah, I think it was correct to block the Goblin Lackey when I could. But this is not a fair fight. I'm just conceding out of here. Alright, at least I know what I'm up against, and I know what I need. I need an early Deathblade Elite to stop this craziness from ever getting out of hand. And the fact that my opponent had a main deck Aftershock is a bit tilting, because I assembled my nice combo. So Terror's Faithful is definitely an option. But in my experience, you lose the games against goblins because they just attack with so many creatures. So it's not actually amazing. It's going to be better than some of my other cards though. And I think one of these is Devout Witness. That just doesn't seem amazing. My curve gets a bit weaker if I put in the Faithful, but Devout Witness at 3 mana 2/2 against goblins is not what I want. Even though my opponent played the weird Giant Strength. So I'm looking at the 2 exiles, because I think they should be better than maybe even Grizzly Fade, if I want to be just a cheaper deck, or maybe some of the early cards I have. Belash Trapper, not amazing, but it's also a way to punish Giant Strength. I like all my other cards. Solitary Emissary is actually pretty weak because it trades with my opponent's 1/1s, of which Goblins has a lot. The only question is, if I take out the emissaries, if my deck is becoming too slow. I actually think it's not. I think I still have the powerful early start of Deathblade Elite into Aura, and I want to keep that. But I also have the 2 exiles, the Faithful and the Grizzly Fates, to take over the late game. So that also makes the Goertzen more of a I pick off your creatures one by one kind of card, rather than I'm winning the game because I'm so aggressive and I'm, well, just slamming in there every single turn. I like the Shelter, and I like the Armor of Thorns. If my opponent has just damage-based removal, that's actually very good. The one card I'm looking at is Goertzen Tusker because it works well with the late game cards that I've put in, but I think it's still the weakest option out of the cards that I'm playing now. I'm gonna try it like this. And would I like to play first? Yes. Where is my 1/1? My trusty 1/1. It's not here, but this hand is not mulliganable. You can't mulligan it ever, so I'm not going to. I have the turn 1 forest, thanks to grassland. I've been happy with grasslands overall. I knew that it had some disadvantages, but the fact that my mana just works out perfectly every single game means I take less mulligans and so on and so on. And as we've seen, it's actually not the end of the world if you have to delay your spells by a turn. You can usually, as long as it gives you a better position, it's actually quite fine. I'm not trading these two. Phantom Nomad. That's actually a reasonable play here. Rather than Piana, I could keep up the white, which is not really relevant. Phantom Nomad blocks a Goblin Patrol just perfectly, and I have protection from War Chief. So I might want to get in. I really don't want to take more damage against this Goblin Patrol if I don't have to. And I think it's unlikely that my opponent runs into Phantom Nomads with his Patrol. So I think I can actually get in for a point here. My opponent would definitely attack into Piana. And having Piana in play is good if I cast Battle Screech and flashback it. But given what my opponent has, I actually think that I'm winning the game once I cast Battle Screech anyway. This Giant Strength looks really weak against the Banalish Trapper that I have in play, but I'm not going to trade 4 damage for the counter here. So now I'm actually going to delay the Battle Screech with the Trapper in play and my opponent just spending 2 cards on a 4/3. It seems best to just tap the Patrol, and then depending on what I draw, I will have all the options. If my opponent doesn't drop anything, in fact, I'm just winning on this board very easily. Skirk Drill Sergeant is also quite weak here. Armadillo Cloak, my opponent is far away from casting Aftershock, so I can just Armadillo Cloak the Piana, and then next turn I untap with Shelter, so it becomes invulnerable. Alright. That was a lot easier than game 1. Could have been because I was facing a turn 1 Goblin Lackey. So I just have to hope that that doesn't happen. The Solitary Emissaries aren't the cards that I want in this matchup, and I like my sideboarding. So I kind of just try to survive while still assembling these aura-heavy combos. I've not cast a single Grizzly Fade this whole tournament, which is kind of unfortunate. I'm on the draw. I have a Deathblade Elite. I have a Phantom Nomad. I have an Armor of Thorns. I think this is a keep. I need to draw into land, but I have 2 draw steps to find it. I have 3 other 1-drops to draw. If I draw a Plains, I have the Nomads. If I draw a Green Source, I have this combo. And also my late game is looking quite nice. No matter what I draw, basically. I'm not going to mulligan this, because I think strategically this hand is set up really well. I'm playing the finals, so I'm facing a good deck, I know that. I'm not beating a turn 1 Goblin Lackey plus turn 2 Giant Strength. But I don't really have hands to mulligan into that beat that. So I think this is a hand that I should keep. I think it's a lot better than the hand that had Goertzen Varian and Armadillo Cloak and 5 lands, for example. Alright, I'll take a Plains. It's not a forest, but it's a great start. Haha, the grasslands. The classic grasslands. So I think what I have to do here is play the grasslands and then try to armor up the elite next turn. So here a forest would have been better. A Plains I think would have been a bit weaker. Opponent doesn't play anything. Tranquil Thicket. I think I'm just casting that, in fact. I'm not provoking it, I'm just casting Phantom Nomad, and then I'm going into Goertzen Voreen. I want to cast my auras when I know I'm getting value. I don't want my opponent to have Kindle mana up, all these kind of things. And actually with the 2 Voreens, the Deathblade is just a support card. I'm still not willing to trade it off with the Skirk Drill Sergeant, but it's also not super important to suit it up as soon as possible, which was also made a bit more difficult by the Grasslands, clearly. Goblin Matron, alright. Might be armoring up here. If my opponent holds back both creatures, I can't really do that though with the Deathblade elite. So then I'll just play the Voreen to start picking off the 1/1s. Interesting choice. The War Chief, actually not very threatening on this board. One thing I could do here is actually use the Deathblade elite to get rid of the Drill Sergeant, so that my opponent just doesn't kill me out of nowhere. And it's actually quite a threatening card in the long run. I think I want to do that. So doing this, it might have been better to trade off earlier, but overall I just took 1 point of extra damage while dealing 1. So this doesn't seem horrible. Now, if my opponent's play is a War Chief, I'm actually happy. The War Chief is quite weak on this board. Yep, no lands. That would be the best case scenario. Alright. So now, drawing a Brilliant Halo is absolutely amazing, because if I play Armor of Thorns on Goertzen Voreen, then my Voreen just dies to Aftershock, and it's actually kind of unfortunate. But with this, I can put the Brilliant Halo on the Voreen. And in theory, I could also put Armor of Thorns on Phantom Nomad, which also become not unstoppable, but a huge threat that my opponent needs to Aftershock. So if I'm putting so much pressure on my opponent that he basically has to have Aftershock, I think it's better to have 2 targets that my opponent has to deal with. I'm also dropping everything I have, and if the Goertzen Voreen dies, I get back the Halo, so my next Voreen is also a 4/4 provoke. And my opponent has seen enough. Knowing that I would provoke the Goblin War Chief, deal 4 points of damage with a creature that's just not getting dealt with, it would have stuck around as a 2/2 forever. And what my opponent didn't know was that my hand was still kind of nice. So I think we played against 3 pretty good decks, in fact. I liked the Storm deck, I lost the game to it. I liked the Slide deck. I think the Slide deck had a pretty bad matchup against me, and I didn't see a Lightning Rift, so that deck seemed to be lacking win conditions. And this Goblin deck was pretty insane in game 1. Game 2, it was just really weak. Giant Strength showing why it's generally not a good card. And in this game, I don't know, the War Chief just didn't threaten me. What my opponent would have needed was Beetleback Chiefs, maybe a Goblin Goon. Goblin Goon probably the most important card in this matchup against the green-white provoke decks. But in my experience, the Goblin deck doesn't really like to play against green-white anyway. So yeah, winning this Vintage Masters draft. I'm at over 30 drafts in this format. I've opened 0 Power 9 cards, but I've had a blast playing it, and yeah, I think it's a great format. If you've tried it out, great. If you haven't, you might still want to do it. It's available on Magic Online for quite a while still. And well, if you like it but don't want to play it yourself, that's what these videos are for. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm Goertzen, recording Drafting with Simon. See you next time.